That's not really a good gavel, but.
No.
Depends.
Good evening and welcome to the June 26, 2013 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda is to vote minutes of June 19th. Did anybody get to read these?
I have. I find them essentially complete.
Okay. Want to make a motion?
So
I make a move to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the table. Anybody have comment? Anybody else have comment? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, which is to accept the minutes of June 19th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. First item is request for determination of applicability. Nancy Anderson, 246 Mill Road, Falmouth, for permission to reconstruct and expand the existing patio, install a stockade fence flush to the ground, 200 square feet of mitigation plantings for patio expansion, flower bed, and associated excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the staff has reviewed the project. We are recommending a -2 under the bylaw and -3 under the state with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Any questions on the board?
Just a question on the mitigation planning. I realize we're trying to keep this thing low-key, but as a general rule, do we have any control over the mitigation if it never gets done?
I'm sure Mr. Borselli will assure us it's going to get done.
Mike, would you like to comment on that
And
question?
I'm really asking the question, not because these people might be the
No,
greatest
I
things.
understand, Courtney. It was
I'm asking a general
I
question.
mean, it was a small patio project. There really wasn't much to it. The staff guided, gave the advice to file the RDA because it was in a lawn area. I mean, technically mitigation
okay.
plantings are required. We can write it into the RDA and
I'm happy, I'm just asking a
Okay.
question.
I can add one thing to that, Madam Chairman. Michael
Yeah.
Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. We did talk to Mark about that very thing, so hopefully to make it clear, we put a note on the plan that the planting is supposed to be done before the patio, and the contractor is supposed to notify Mark upon completion. And I see no reason why I know it's not a binding recordable document, but the builder's been made aware of this, and he will tell the landscape contractor, and I've been told that everyone's going to be cooperative.
Okay, and if we find out that people aren't,
Then they'll be-
we'll backtrack through you.
Right.
How's that?
Fine.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mike.
there's a motion and second on the table to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination, which means people can go ahead and do the project
Yes, in
as
accordance
you've
with the
discussed,
staff report.
that you've discussed with Mark. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Happy 4th if we don't see you.
And happy weekend. I actually think that's a good idea. Start your weekend after this meeting.
I'm inclined to-
Aren't you?
I will
I do.
Agree with that? Yeah. Well, for some of us.
Yeah.
Continued requests for hearings under notice of intent. Martha and Henry, oh, wait a second.
No, this one was
Before we
not
get
open.
to continued hearings, all hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Now, continued requests for hearings under a notice of intent. Martha and Henry Lartigue, 167 Fay Road, Woods Hole, for permission to remove invasive vegetation to restore approximately 10,700 square feet with native vegetation and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
I am going to recuse myself, Madam Chair.
Okay. You got that, Susan? Jen?
I'll save any of my comments until after Dan's presentation, and we hadn't opened this before, so.
Okay, so we're starting. This is new tonight.
We're killing this out.
Yeah, you're killing the other because we didn't. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm Dan Celine. I'm the landscape architect on behalf of the Lartigues. I'm here tonight essentially to put the project in context and to introduce Teresa Sprague here. I think you're familiar with. She's the principal of Blue Flax, ecological design company who's assisted us with this aspect of the project. My role really is to simply remind you that you've seen this property before on at least 2 occasions, and most recently when I brought it in for an amendment to an existing order of conditions. What we have before you tonight is a new notice of intent for work that is associated with the main project, but is distinct enough to warrant a separate notice. Essentially, I mean, this was the plan I showed you recently. The work that Teresa will discuss with you is, essentially the buffer. And so with that, I'll just turn this over to Teresa, and I'm here to answer any questions that might relate to my aspect of the project.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Good evening, Teresa.
Good evening. Large board here. I'm just going to basically start off with the existing conditions in the buffer zone and resource area, and then discuss what we're proposing to do.
Could you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry,
again?
Teresa
Thanks.
Sprague, Blue Flax Design. So as you know, the recently redeveloped property at 167 Fay Road comprises a single-family dwelling with garage, proposed driveway, patios, associated landscaping currently under construction. Property is located in Woods Hole on Vineyard Sound. Resource areas on the property include coastal beach, coastal dune, coastal bank, and associated buffer zones. An approximately 3,000 square foot mitigation area has been proposed, and black tupelo, bayberry, beach plum have already been planted along the limit of work, directly abutting the area described as vegetated buffer on the plot plan and site plan. The vegetated buffer is located directly behind the coastal dune. A vegetation inventory that I completed on March 10th, 2013 identified the vegetated buffer as being densely colonized by invasive species including shrub honeysuckle, border privet, vine honeysuckle, multiflora rose, and Asiatic bittersweet. There's black cherry and 1 scrub oak, all damaged and covered currently by the bittersweet noted within the buffer. The dune itself comprises mainly rugosa rose with some invasive vines and poison ivy present throughout the dune area, and the foredune at the coastal beach exhibits 2 moderately healthy stands of bayberry, though some had fallen over and roots had been exposed due to scarping in some recent storm events. There are signs, or were signs, of recent overwash, particularly sand accretion in the existing path area. And these photographs that I'm showing here, just to describe briefly, are what we're finding, or what we've discovered throughout the buffer zone. So you can see this is mainly shrub honeysuckle, entirely covered by vine honeysuckle and bittersweet. This area, this photograph here, make sure I have the right pictures. I'm sorry, this photograph here shows the mitigation planting area that's currently been planted, and then the vegetated buffer area where the invasives are already sort of working their way buffer. On page 3 and 4, I go into the specifics about the performance standards for the different resource areas that are on the site, but in general, just to summarize, the goals of the plan are to protect the stability, function, and wildlife habitat value of the coastal dune, coastal bank, and buffer zone. This will be accomplished through the protection of existing native vegetation on site, by removal of invasive plant species that will improve, by removal of invasive plant species that have overwhelmed and outcompeted native vegetation, and by restoring an appropriate native plant community that will improve the ecological integrity and wildlife habitat value of the resource area. After invasive species are treated and removed, a native dune, back dune plant community will be established in these areas. The proposed project will not alter or modify the dune form or permanently alter any portion of the coastal dune or coastal bank. No sand will be removed from the coastal dune, nor will any structure impede the landward and lateral movement of sand throughout the area. The removal of dense woody invasive species from the area and restoration of native dune community will actually support the natural erosion and accretion that occurs in a healthy dune system. In addition, the removal of low wildlife value, invasive species, and restoration of diverse plant community will improve wildlife habitat by providing high-value forage, cover, and nesting opportunities. The proposed restoration project will directly abut and support the previously approved mitigation planting, thereby increasing the overall width of the buffer zone to the coastal dune, will not have any adverse effect on bank or dune stability. No coastal engineering structures on the buffer zone, coastal dune, or bank are proposed. Herbicides proposed for invasive species management will be used selectively, applied using low-volume methods, including selective basal bark cut and wipe treatments. No broad foliar spraying will occur, and they will reducing the risk of damage to valuable native vegetation that exists within the project area. So in light of those goals, the proposed project and restoration measures will have no adverse impact on the resource area or buffer zone and will actually enhance and protect the interests of the State Wetlands Protection Act and local wetlands regulations. So just to run through, these areas here show the coastal dune, this back dune area that was previously shown as vegetated buffer on site plans done by the SS Design. And then this area in darker gray is the existing mitigation planting area. These trees are existing throughout. These trees were planted as part of the mitigation, the black tupelo, the previous mitigation planting. So this is the area that we're focusing on down there. Here at the edge of the dune, where the dune meets the coastal beach, there's existing bayberry stands and some existing rugosa rows that's healthy and would be protected throughout their project. So we begin the project with a selective basal bark injection herbicide pretreatment for the invasive species throughout the project area, followed approximately 2 weeks later by mechanical removal of invasive species. We're proposing to use low ground impact track machine equipped with a specialized root grapple that will access the invasive species area from Fay Road on the southwestern side of the property before the final mitigation plantings are put in. There's a photograph of that at the top of the plan. The grapple hook will be used to mechanically remove invasive plant material, including roots, by combing through the sand, removing only vegetation, and leaving all sand soils behind. Machinery will work from the southern portion of the project area northward. The 12-foot reach of the machine that we'll be using will allow us to remove invasive species from the dune area without actually having to encroach upon the dune at all. Invasive species that are out of machinery reach or directly around existing trees and the bayberry stands will be cut and removed by hand in order to avoid any damage to those native species. It is expected, of course, that some root material will remain and that there is a substantial invasive species seed bank throughout this area. Therefore, follow-up treatments beginning in late summer and going on over the next 3 years will be necessary. So we will have to come in and do follow-up selective cut and wipe invasive species removal. And all of that's described in the timeline in this management plan. Immediately after doing the invasive species removal, we'll begin restoration of native species. At this time, because of the mix of mechanical removal and selective herbicide treatments, we believe we'll be able to reach 80% control after the first intensive treatment. So we'll begin with planting the proposed woody vegetation, which includes over 126 shrubs: bayberry, beach plum, black chokeberry, Virginia rose, potentilla, viburnum dentatum, as well as some eastern red cedars in the area. Then we'll follow that by planting the ground cover herbaceous layer comprised of important native back dune species, including bearberry, beach grass, pen sedge, poverty grass, Spartina patens, little blue stem, crinkle hairgrass, sickle leaf aster, butterfly weed, heath aster, and seaside goldenrod. So we're proposing to plant over 3,000 plugs throughout this area. And that's all detailed here on the restoration plan for you. So I think, and then specifically on pages 9 through 11 on the invasive species management plan gives you the exact breakdown and the timeline and exactly what we're going to be using here. Again, looking at using a mixture of glyphosate and triclopyr-based herbicides, all wetland approved in these areas, selective treatment, no broad foliar spraying. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Teresa.
Thanks.
Jen?
No question.
Tom?
How is the initial herbicide going to be applied?
So we'll do an initial pre-treatment with selective wiping, basil bark wiping, and in some of the larger shrub, honeysuckle shrubs, we'll do an actual injection into the basal part of the bark and the growth out of the growth, and that's how we'll do the initial treatment. Let that translocate, so from minimum 2 weeks, best case scenario would be to allow it to translocate for 3 to 5 weeks before we come in and start doing mechanical removal.
So there's no spraying?
There'll be no spraying in the initial,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Cory?
No questions.
Mike?
No question.
Mario?
No questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
Excuse me.
You said, I think you said 70 to 80%
Control after
control after,
the initial,
like this year.
yes, the initial intensive management phase, yeah.
Okay.
And then after that is following up and getting that last 20%.
Right, but if, this is just hypothetical.
Okay.
Suppose you couldn't do any treatment next year for some reason. How quickly would that, well, if it was a year like this year, it would probably go 20 to 50% pretty quickly, wouldn't it?
Pretty quickly, yes, yes. I mean, follow-up treatment is absolutely necessary, which is why we've put together a 3-year management timeline. And in addition to that, we know that there's going to be ongoing follow-up treatment that's going to be required, whether that's simply hand pulling. There's also invasive species pressure from the property on either side, so
Right.
on both properties.
And any birds who come through?
Of course, yeah. I mean, this isn't, I mean, I'd like to call this an eradication project, but truthfully, it's management. It's
Right,
really about
right,
management,
right.
exactly.
Any of these,
Yes,
I mean, and some require more intensive management than others.
Absolutely,
Some areas,
and-
depending on where you are and what the issue, what the plans
exactly,
are.
right. And having the pressure on properties on either, on either side is certainly problematic, having the invasive species, and of course, we can't move beyond the property line. What may happen, and it does happen often, is a property owner sees what's happening on the property beside them and likes to come in and also propose to do some invasive species
Right.
management, which is always helpful. But certainly, follow-up is absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
Yep.
good, well, good luck.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing the
The
monitoring.
monitoring, absolutely. No,
That
that
goes
will be
on.
essential, and yes.
Dan?
Could I just intervene here for a moment? Jeff Ryther was to be here tonight to be the MC. However, he wasn't able
He
to
couldn't,
come
yeah.
because of a health concern. He has the green cards, and we'll bring those into the office.
Yeah, just bring them in, Ben, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Tomorrow, okay.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, following the last comment, I've already been actually contacted by the abutter who is interested in doing similar invasive species management on his property. So it's a possibility that maybe we can get an area under control that
Yeah.
is beyond this extent of this property.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, the bigger the linear area, I mean, you're still going to have to
Do follow-up.
do follow-up, but,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that's great.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Move to hear, close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Any further questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep, you too. And a good weekend. And a good 4th of July.
Yes, absolutely, you too, thanks.
James Lucio, lot 532 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, for permission to construct a new 4-bedroom, single-family house with attached garage deck with stairs, to install a retaining wall, Title V sewage disposal system, dry wells, driveways, trench drains, utility, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I will save any of my comments until after Jack's presentation.
Good evening, Jack.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jack Colley. I'm a civil engineer in private practice, and I've been retained by the Lucios to prepare the plan and application that's before you this evening. Accompanying me is their attorney, Brian Wall. And what I'd like to do is just describe the project in a general manner, and then let Brian offer his opinion about one or two specific items. Then I'm going to go back and explain.
Okay, Jack? Jack? My hearing is actually good, but I'm having a little trouble hearing you. So could you speak into there?
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can everybody
Wonderful.
hear Jack? Okay.
For the record, Madam Chair, if I may, just a point of information, did Mr. DiGregorio, is he recusing himself?
Yes,
or-
he is.
Okay, he didn't say anything, he just...
Sorry about that. We'll ask Mario to announce that next time. He slinks out of the room.
Good evening again.
Well, I
Okay.
figured that,
Okay, good evening again. What it is we propose to do is construct a house on a vacant lot. The lot is identified as 532. I believe that's the designation land court gave it. It's highly irregular in shape. This is an inset. You start at the northwest corner. It basically goes due east 430 feet, due north 322 feet, 78 feet towards Green Pond, meanders 460 feet due south along Green Pond, and then through a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bearings due west, basically. What it is we'd like to, like I said, build a house on this lot. Now, in the process of doing this work, we started by retaining a wetland scientist, Jack Vaccaro, who staked this line back in September 25th, 2012.
I'm listening.
Okay, I wasn't sure. We also, because of how this project evolved, ended up retaining a coastal geologist. You should have his report, and I'll comment on that later. This is typical construction for a vacant lot. That is, we're going to have an access point off of Acapesket Road. It's going to go down a traveled way to a proposed location, which is then going to be serviced by water, gas, and an on-site sewage disposal system. It's depicted on this plan, and we have an inset on this side, which is the same thing except at 10 scale. We also have, by virtue of I'll call it a request by one of the neighbors' consultants, provided, and I know we haven't provided it within the 7 days, but I will do so because I anticipate a continuance. A copy of the first and second floor plans, and we also, based on that letter, provided some basic calculations, which again will be provided so you have the full 7 days to review it, which shows certain disturbed, altered, vegetated areas. I'd like Brian to have the floor so we can discuss 1 or 2 points, and then I'll continue with my presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Brian Wall, I'm an attorney, and as Jack said, I represent the applicants in this case. I represent them generally, but I'm going to confine my comments at the moment to a letter that's been submitted into the file by Attorney Edward Kirk of Osterville, who represents an abutter. I did receive the letter earlier this week, and I did have the opportunity to speak with Attorney Kirk about that. Basically, what the letter does is it points out that the applicant's property is subject to a number of easements, including an access and utility easement and a driveway easement. And Attorney Kirk has taken the position that the proposed structure is actually on the easement, and I quote, in his words, in such a way as to extinguish or compromise his client's easement rights. And my comment is that we disagree with that conclusion. We fully agree that the property is in fact subject to these easements. We were well aware of the easements when we were preparing and designing the project, and we interpret them differently than Attorney Kirk is. We believe that the two easements are separate and not connected, as he has attempted to show on the plan. And so therefore, we believe that the project can proceed tonight without any concern about adverse effects upon property rights. And that segues to my second point. I think this commission is well aware that it's not something that you do is to get into private property rights disputes. You usually review and limit your review to the activities that are proposed and the impacts that those activities have upon the wetland resource interests. And on top of that, your standard order of conditions contains a condition that says this order confers no property rights. And so even if you have battling attorneys over the interpretation of this easement, the commission should feel comfortable proceeding because it's a matter of private property rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack, you're up again.
In addition to the letter Attorney Kirk submitted, there is also, by reference, a comment in this 11-point discussion Mr. McGrath submitted regarding this project. So I think it's fair to say, Brian, it's all inclusive. The remarks made by Mike McGrath are addressed in your comments. I'll refer to these later, and the only reason why I'm going to discuss them is they've been submitted as a matter of record, and so I feel compelled to discuss them point by point. I'll be brief, but I will discuss each point. So what we have is we have a lot it's been perked. In fact, coincidentally, the percolation tests were done by Holmes and McGrath, and they showed to pass, and that's probably referenced on our third sheet. An on-the-ground instrument survey was performed. The wetlands were flagged by Jack Vaccaro and located. The coastal bank was originally delineated by myself, and because of the concern the neighbor had, and what we did is we retained coastal geologists. That information should be in your files. The coastal geologist, I think it's fair to say, has fairly good standing with this committee, and as well is experienced because he aided in adopting the coastal bank regulations as we know them today. In his report, he also has 3 transects, and I think it's important to note because of a reference in the letter provided by Mr. McGrath. What it is we show the wetlands, we show the coastal bank, we show the 100-foot offset, or the buffer A from the salt marsh. We show a 100-foot offset from the freshwater wetlands, which I took a very conservative approach. It could be 75 feet by your regulations, but we chose to show it 100 feet. We also show a 50-foot offset from the top of the coastal bank, which is depicted here. And then, finally, we show a 100-foot offset from the top of the coastal bank. And I'm going to say to this board, with the exception of drainage, everything to the left or to the west of this line is really out of your jurisdiction. I don't think it's a big deal because basically it includes what's in your jurisdiction is most of the house, but the septic system is greater than 100 feet away. The septic tank, the pump chamber, actually the last half of the house, and some of the grading we're doing there. Now, because of the location of the lot, we have, and the desire by this commission to provide drainage for improvements on property that's subject to your jurisdiction, we show 2 catch basins, one here and one here. The intent is to capture all the roof runoff from all the impervious areas of the structure. And I need to point that out because rather hidden in your stormwater calculation, regulations is an esoteric subparagraph that says if the structure is less than 2,500 square feet, and this structure as proposed is 1,830 square feet, and we capture the first flush, we're exempt from all your other regulations. If it's a single-family dwelling, if it's less than 2,500 square feet, and we capture the first flush. I'm stating that these two catch basins do just that. And I'll come back to that point because of Mr. McGrath's letter. We think this is perfectly appropriate where this is. Everything shaded in brown is what presently is disturbed. There's a footpath that goes all the way to the north. If you look at the inset, we don't show all of it, comes and meanders parallel to Green Pond, keeps going down. How far south, I'm not sure. And then this road actually used to service the house, but also the shoreline. I have, I think, a rather unique opportunity in that and experience of this lot because Paul Ryle and I prepared the approval not required plan. Paul Ryle is now deceased. He passed away in 2005. We prepared the subdivision, or the A&R plan in 02, 03, somewhere in that area. We did a topographic survey of this entire area. When this property, that is lot 531, was held by George, we've surveyed this whole shorefront for purposes of making, I think it was Title V improvements to his house. So we have that information in-house, but I didn't show it on the plan. And the survey that's done wasn't done 12 years ago. It was done within the last calendar year. Everything that's shown in brown, oh, I take that back. Yeah, well, right here, this is also shown in brown, is existing. At the time, of September, I think, of 2012. Now, I don't know if this exists, but this portion exists, this portion exists, this going down to the water exists. This is George's driveway, or what used to be George's driveway, then these footpaths. And just as ancillary to this whole conversation, George had a shellfish grant. He had a shellfish grant down here. I sat at his table and spoke to him about it many years ago. And he used to get access to that shellfish grant. In those days, you could drive down to the shoreline. He did so. He had a grant. He worked it for a number of years. I don't think it was very successful. He gave up on it, but that pathway stayed there. None of the changes that you see here, if there are any changes different than what shows here, were done by our client. Our client doesn't live in this town. That may come up later. We have been on this site a number of times staking the house, because we actually staked it, I think, 3 times. The first time to just see what it looked like, the second to make a tweak, and then third based on some commentaries by Mr. McGrath in our recalculation of the coastal bank, so it's been pushed back. However, I can say that on 2 occasions when I was down there, there was activity in this area. I think it was incidental to some work done on lot 531. But it wasn't done by my client. That's the important thing. In order to build this house, because of the vertical difference, that being elevation 27 here and 17 here, there's a 10-foot drop. What we propose to do is have the basement at 25.5, so there'll be some minor regrading here, drop it about 1.5 feet, and we're proposing a retaining wall right here. And that retaining wall has a top elevation of 24.9 to be consistent with the basement of 25.5, or about 7 or 8 inches lower. And is necessary, or it's one way to change the grade. I happen to think it's probably the best way. And then with a 3-to-1 slope, create new 17, new 18, new 19, and at the base of the wall, it's just about elevation 20. It's a 2-story structure. It's 1,832 square feet, first floor, That's what covers the ground, 1,832, that includes the porch, includes the stairs.
Jack,
So yeah,
I don't mean to interrupt, but can you back up and go through your grades again? You said you're making new grades?
right here, you can see this elevation set, you know what, I'm gonna go to the larger. That doesn't have contours, I can't.
Are your finished grades on the plan?
Yes, they are. You know what, this is a 20 scale plan, it's so small. The 20 scale is usually easy to deal with, but it's such a busy plan. It is here, it's
What do they look-
17, 18, 19, and 20 just in front of the wall. Proposed grades on our plan are shown as solid lines. Existing are dashed.
Okay, why don't I see them on the...
And why don't I just point it out to you, hold on.
Yeah, come on, point them out to me, Jack, because I honestly can't see them. I could be staring right at them and I don't see them, but...
Okay, right here. It's 17,
Got it.
18,
Oh, that's what those
19,
lines are.
and 20.
Got it.
Okay, that's at a 3-to-1 slope.
Took me a while to figure out that that wasn't your depth.
So what I showed you
Okay.
guys is just this area, it's 3-to-1.
Got it.
It's gentle enough so it's stable, we can landscape, we
book.
can grade it, we can landscape it. 3-to-1, we don't expect
Is this the
to be
one?
cutting grass.
Is this what you're talking about?
See, Jack, none of
Here
us
and
can
here?
see your
Right in
change
here.
grades.
17, 18, 19, 20. These solid lines are proposed
Got it.
grades. This line right here is 17. We're just cutting it off and going, that's.
Oh.
So, there's about
Huh?
anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 feet of fit there. The end result is you're going to have a retaining wall where the top elevation is, if I call this 24.9, the bottom of the wall is going to be about where my feet are, about 4.5 feet below it. We need that because we have a 10-foot vertical change between what I'll call the back side of the house, with the garages, to the front side of the house, which faces the water. I think anyone who has experience building a house knows that you don't really want to have more than 6 feet vertical change if you have a walkout. We're trying to get this house to fit in this as best we can. And for those who've been out there, you'll know that it's kind of like a giant ravine swale going down here. We're plunking the house right in that. So that's the location of the house. Now, reading this plan, going to this one, which is identical but at a larger scale. These are the house plans, and you will get them at the continued hearing. Based on some of the information from the grant, questions, we do show calculation, again, that will be provided in a format that's understandable. What those calculations say are, well, let me back up. Everything in green that we show here is above the A buffer and in the B buffer. We're saying the A buffer ends right here, and the B buffer ends right here. This is non-jurisdictional, and everything in green is area that is vegetated in a B buffer that's going to be altered in some way, shape, or form because of the proposed activity. But it's not our proposal to change anything in the A buffer because of the standards you have. So, this is vegetated, this is vegetated, that's vegetated. We calculated that to be 2,066 square feet. Of that, the impervious area is 750 square feet. We're proposing 841 square feet of mitigation. And I'm going to have to take 2 steps back on that because I may have misinterpreted your buffer regulations. If so, we're going to make those changes. But this plan that we presently have before you, just to repeat it, shows that this is the buffer, the B buffer. What's in green is 2,066 square feet of altered vegetated area. I didn't qualify if it was good vegetated, bad vegetated. It's not driveway. So if it's not driveway, I'm considering it vegetated.
It's vegetated.
Yeah, it's vegetated, exactly.
Let's just leave it at
That's
that.
vegetated, that's vegetated. That represents 2,066, of which 750 square feet is impervious. That's important because according to your regulations, we have to provide at least a 2-to-1 mitigation for the impervious area. That's where I think I went wrong. I'm going to reread the regulations because we provided 871, a little over a 1-to-1 ratio. So I am telling you, we will comply with that regulation.
You know what it is in the B buffer?
Excuse me?
You know what it is in the B buffer? Increase in impervious surface in the B buffer? It's 2-to-1.
Yeah, I know, I made that mistake.
All right.
I thought it was 1-to-1, and so we have to find at least 700 square feet more. Now, having said that, Brian talked about easements. There's 2 easements, an access utility easement that's up here, as well as this driveway easement, which is a turnaround easement to get into this garage, in my opinion, to get into this house. If my client was sitting here today, I would say he made a big mistake. He should never have given that easement. I don't know what dialogue took place between the buyer and the seller. The buyer obviously needed it to get into the garage. My client, for whatever reason, agreed to it and created a bit of a hardship for himself. Not a bit of a hardship, a large hardship for himself. But the point is, that's an easement, that's an easement. We're not in those easements. In fact, I think it's fair to say, and Brian will support this, that we're allowed to use that. We can drive across that. It's not exclusive only to the use of the neighbor. They have the right to pass and repass to get in the garage. But my client has the right to drive over that if he wants, or walk over it, or you can't block it, you can't impede it, you can't prohibit it, but he can use it. The same with this. He can walk over it, use it. You can't impede normal construction of utilities and access. That's important to note because our septic system's in that area and our water line's in that area. By the way, even if our neighbors chose to put a new water line in that easement, we have enough room so we can put it in and comply with Title V. So it doesn't need variances, doesn't need any special conditions, he can just put it in. He has to put it in outside of where the septic system's going, but he has utilization of that easement to use the water service. And even if he didn't, even if we couldn't, we could design it to have it double encased. So, we try to think of all the different nuances.
But
You
this
want
is,
me to speed
this
it
is
up?
property. I want you to stick with
Okay,
conservation.
okay. I clearly have to look at the buffer regulations. And we will do that. One of the things when I started this project is I didn't understand the full scope and nature of that easement, and I thought we couldn't plant in it. But after having dialogue with Brian, it's clear to me that we have the rights to plant as long as we don't plant in the driveway surface, which of course we wouldn't do. And so we have a tremendous amount of area. This is the length of the lot. It's 429 feet from here way over to here. So we have plenty of
Jack,
room.
before
You
you
should-
start
you
talking
should
about the
talk
buffer
to
regs,
Jen.
you're gonna come and talk to me.
You have to talk to Jen because the buffer plantings have to be in the buffer.
Well, we filled.
Jack, we'll discuss the buffer
Okay,
regs.
okay.
You're a little off base with them, but it's something I can talk you through, that's easy enough.
All of our proposed plantings start in the A buffer. We propose all the plantings referred to are in the A buffer. They're all along here, all along here, all along here. We did reserve a 3.5-foot path that already exists of this, I think, about 8-foot wide path walking down. We didn't show any here. We didn't show any here, albeit we could, which is A buffer. All the planting, though, starts in the A buffer. That is the 841 square feet. That is what I wanted to present to you. I really don't want to talk about this, but since it's submitted as evidence, I feel compelled to, and so I'm going to do that. There are 11 bullet items here, of which the first, second, and 11th refer to planting in buffer zones. I'm just going to acknowledge that we have to make changes to the buffer. Mr. McGrath may expound on that a little bit more. But, item 3, house footprint is shown but no dimensions. We will provide that. I actually have that, but it's not done in a timely manner. We will provide it at the continued meeting. Albeit, you just heard a notice of intent that didn't have any dimensions on the house, and there's probably many applications that are submitted that don't have dimensions.
That may
The
be
plan-
true, that may be true, but they should
Okay.
have dimensions.
Yeah, I suppose. And I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing we won't provide it. Number 4, the plan fails to show the proposed house satisfies the height restriction. That's a zoning issue. That should never be discussed here. The plan number 5, the plan shows a retaining wall, but fails to show how the wall will be constructed or how large a footprint will be required, and then it goes on. In my estimation, there's a misinterpretation of the plan in that it's not a 7-foot-high retaining wall, but it's actually 5 feet. So I just want that point of clarification, because the downhill slope isn't at elevation 18, it's actually more like 20.2. And then he goes on saying that there's insufficient information as to how it may be constructed. It is going, I anticipate it's going to be an 8-inch concrete wall. It's a little less than 5 feet. In all likelihood, it's going to have an 18-inch footing. The plan fails to show details for the proposed drainage. We do show the drainage, we do show a cross-section, and then it goes on, the proposed dry wells not be sufficiently sized. I happen to believe they are. I will give you that information. Again, I point to stormwater calculations, less than 2,500 square feet, single-family dwelling. We are permitted, as long as we capture the first flush, we're exempted from all those other regulations. And I'm telling you, that is what we're doing. The first flush is 1.25 inches. Number 7 is a letter from a coastal geologist regarding the elimination of coastal bank. I can tell you this, your submission should show 3 transects by Jim O'Connor. They're based on an on-ground instrument survey. And I don't believe the last statement, item 7, that plans shown drawing transects should be prepared and stamped by a professional landscaper. In fact, I reviewed CMR 250, which is the rules and regulations for professional engineers and professional land surveyors, and clearly in it, it states that that is engineers that are trained in the discipline of civil engineering, which I am, can do surveying incidental to their work. Taking transects is incidental. Taking topography, in my opinion, is incidental. Running levels for floodplain compliance is incidental. The FEMA forms specifically state engineers and/or land surveyors can prepare them. So I take exception to that. I believe that I'm eminently qualified. I know what I'm doing. I actually worked for Mike McGrath 8 years. I got a wonderful education from him, and I know what I'm doing. Number 8. Embarrassingly enough, those same regulations say I have to have this stamped by a professional land surveyor for proposed houses. I didn't think that was the case. He is correct. I do work with a local firm. I spoke to that land surveyor. He has no problem reviewing my plan and stamping it, and that will happen in 2 weeks, if you meet in 2 weeks. Number 9 is discussed by Brian. Number 10, I think, doesn't belong in front of this board. It doesn't belong anywhere, in my opinion. It has to do with whether or not it's a buildable lot. I'd like Paul Rowell to be here, but he's deceased. He died in 2005. Paul Rowell and I prepared this A&R plan. He supervised the surveying, I supervised the engineering. We show on that plan the wetlands line. The planning board accepted it. That was 10 years ago, plus. That's a non-issue in my opinion. If the planning board had a problem with it, they should have sought the advice of the Conservation Commission. They approved it. It's a non-issue. Number 11, well, I told you 1, 2, and 11 have to do with buffer zones. I believe we followed the intent of the buffer zone regulations. We did not need it precisely. We do not have all the requisite planting, but I'll restate, we're not in a base buffer. We are in a B buffer to a coastal bank. And then I looked at the coastal bank regulations, and it's a little vague to me because the coastal bank regulations give us at least 2 setbacks, or maybe 3, depending on what type of bank we have. Jim O'Connell's report says it's not eroding, and it doesn't provide sediment source. It's a stable bank that contains only storm flood waters. I understand its importance, but it is not part of the littoral processes of this area. I bring up that point because when in your own regulations it says if the coastal bank is adjacent to a wetland, I think it happens to be adjacent, but it's also separated by a flat area and a footpath that's clearly upland. So it isn't at control of the coastal bank, I mean at control of the beach. But I'm not pursuing that argument. We show the 50-foot setback. Although I wonder if we could have shown the 25, to be honest with you.
No.
Well, I don't think Jim disagrees, but we showed the 50. There was one point I missed. I don't remember what it is, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Jack. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Jack, I have a couple of questions because I didn't get the house plans, the layout of the house, and I thought you said walkout. This is not a walkout, correct?
It has the capability over here, on top of this.
Okay, Jack, I can't see.
Okay.
So,
This is the retaining wall.
yes.
Page 1 of 1 that says the plan information shown by MR Source. It
Yes.
shows the retaining wall right here.
Yeah?
This is probably the only thing that has to be for the river conservative. They could have a walk up in here that they would walk up and then have to go this way. If they did. If
Okay.
that is fatal.
No, the reason I'm asking is because, now you're gonna hear my little spiel. I cannot stand to see 5-foot limits of work or 3-foot limits of work. I have made this statement multiple times to other engineers. You need to give the contractors room to work. You need to give them an area to dig. So I'm gonna go to Tom, Tommy, and Courtney and say, what kind of excavation needs to be done to build this? From the corner of that house, you've got 5 feet to the limit of work. From the corner of that retaining wall and proposed deck, I believe you have 2 or 3 feet. Hang on, you might have
It's
3.
probably around 2.5 to 3 feet.
Yeah, that is absolutely unacceptable to the staff as far as a limit of work goes. I like to see big limits of work. It keeps everybody out of trouble.
I fully understand.
Yeah,
that.
and this is not the first time I've made this statement. So look at your limit of work. Buffer zones, you and I will meet the week of the 10th. and we'll discuss the buffer zones. Okay? Monday, the 8th or the 9th, okay?
Well, let me make sure I understand that. I have no problem meeting with you, but then I need time to revise the plan.
Yep,
and
I know.
submit. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We don't have room on our July 10th agenda at this point, so.
I'm sorry.
We don't have room on our July 10th agenda
Okay.
at this point,
Okay,
so
that's fine. So
it
if I
won't
could
be, and
meet
they
you
don't
later,
meet
that'd
next
be
week.
great. I have no problem with that.
And you don't have time to meet the next 2 days.
No, I don't, unfortunately, Jack, or I
No,
would.
I would rather have it done right. And
Yep,
focus
no, I
on
just
it,
think
right?
there are just some nuances in the regs that I just need to go over with you. Cut and fill calcs, I'd like to see those, the
sorry,
cut
what?
and fill calcs. So I am concerned about the ability for the contractors to construct this without jeopardizing that limit of work. Cut and fill calcs, since you said there is gonna be, some cutting and filling, I need to see those. I'll need to see the BVW data sheets from Jack Vaccaro. I didn't see those in your submission, Jack.
I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
anytime you guys have a bordering vegetated wetland on your property, this goes to you, to Mr. McGrath, to all the engineers out there that are listening to me, please submit your bordering vegetated data sheets,
It makes sense.
because we need to go out and evaluate whether those lines are done correctly.
Okay, from memory, I know we took 2 transects in that area.
Okay,
We'll
well,
give it
I
to
need
you.
to see them.
Okay.
On your plan, Jack, on your notes, you said portion of the disturbed area behind the house will be replanted and include a 3.5-foot wide footpath. So are you including a 3.5-foot wide footpath behind the house?
We would like to have the footpath start here and go down.
Okay, can I ask a question? If you only have 2 feet to your limit of work, and your limit of work is actually sitting on your no disturbance zone, how are you gonna fit that in, unless it already exists
Well, I
in
think
this
it's a little,
statute?
I think your measurement's a little bit off. This is 10 scale and it's easier to read. That's the first
I know, that's the
thing.
one I was just
Okay.
scaling off.
This actually scales 3.5 feet. So this corner to a bale of hay, which is 18 inches to 24 inches wide, it's 3.5 to 4 feet here, and then it's another 18 inches there. So we plan to put it right here, this being the no disturbance. And then we were gonna go down along here. What's not clear to me is that if we're permitted to apply for a pathway up to 4 feet width to an A zone, why can't we be just upland of that A zone and then?
No, that's, okay, I just needed to know. I wanted to know what you were, what that
Yeah.
meant, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
actually showed the limit of, just to back up a little, we showed the limit of work at the A zone, but this is already an existing travel path. I suppose I could have showed the
Okay.
limit of work there, but I just didn't. I showed
But you're
it.
gonna give
My-
us another
my
plan, and that would be a
concern-
wise thing to
Sorry.
do. You're going to give us another plan, and that
Yeah.
would be a wise thing to do,
Okay.
because I know that there are at least 3 and probably 4 other people who are going to say that you don't have a sufficient limit of work.
So, I need the cut and fill calcs, I need you to look at that limit of work, because I am uncomfortable with it right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
I need the data sheets from Jack Vaccaro. You need to look at your calculations for the buffer, but you know that already. There's one more thing. This board does not, property right easements are really not, the authority of this board or in the purview, so we're not even gonna go there. That is something the property owners will need to battle out themselves.
And we understand.
That's it for right now. You have your trees on your other plan. Oh, there was one more thing, and I just, not, oh, how wide is your wall, Jack? If it scaled it off your 10 plan, so your wall's gonna be 5 feet in height and about a
8
foot.
inches wide
8 inches wide, okay.
on an 18-inch footing. I can almost guarantee it. It could even be slightly smaller. It's
Okay.
only retaining 5 feet.
Okay.
If it was 4 feet, I'm not even sure we needed to do that.
And you are adjacent to another wetland, so you do have the correct 50-foot setback.
Okay.
I'll let Mr. McGrath go through his letter, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. So, okay?
But not now.
No,
The board has questions.
no, I know, I'm not.
Mike?
Where is this proposed deck at the east end of this?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Where is the proposed deck on the east end of the structure?
Okay.
It's easier to see on the bigger plan.
Let me, starts here. It's on the second floor, first of all, or the first floor.
The main floor.
Yeah, the main floor. It starts here,
Are you
goes
stealing
down,
yours?
comes across, comes
Comes
back like
cantilever
that,
down?
right here.
Yes.
There you go. Right there.
Right there. It is.
So
It
it's
is
over
8
the wall,
feet.
it's over the retaining wall.
Yes, that is correct. In fact, we're going to use the top of the retaining wall as a support for the deck.
Then you're definitely gonna have it engineered.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not
it's
that heavy a load. I mean,
Well, yeah, but
Yeah, I
now
just-
you're incorporating in the structure.
so
If you have a structural element, that definitely,
gonna be- It's probably going to be 3-point loads. I kind of know what's going on with that.
Yep.
But
Yep.
we'll address that, Tom.
Mike?
No further questions at this time.
We already jumped over the deck area there. The limited, the battle of the millimeters. You know, there's
He's
intriguing,
gonna pull this back to here.
just even if that's there, this site itself is not gonna be a simple site to manage as far as making sure that things don't end up where we don't want them. You're really gonna have to be on your toes.
Oh, I think you have to get out of the ground. You're right.
You know,
Once you're out of
it's-
the ground, it's a lot easier.
You know,
I
you're,
agree.
you're containing this in storm events and just site management. You do not have any room anywhere to move, to breathe, to stockpile things, to have staging set up, you're digging a 4x4, the dry wells, I'm going on.
Oh, it's not easy. I agree.
Oh, no, it's not.
I know it's not easy. I wish it could be easier, but I don't see any easy solutions. I mean, we could probably move the catch basins around.
Just let me finish, Jack, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm not saying no, I gotta get it out of my head, or it's gonna
Okay.
bounce around in there for a while. That all the activity on the east side of the house, that's the majority of where the care has to be, like you said, till you get out of the ground. Once you're at the main floor level, you're gonna be able to accomplish a whole lot different. You're gonna be able to stabilize, and things will go, but you still have a very, even though it's out of jurisdiction, we have a little dance going all the way out on this. It's not gonna be a whole lot of fun when you got multiple contractors doing this. You've explained well on the issues that I'm here to hear. The other ones I'm kind of putting a deaf ear to right now. But I think you heard where I need for a little bit more of this, a little more elbow room so that people, and a cross-section of that wall, I definitely, if you've incorporated it into the structure by using it as a support place, I'd like to see a cross-section of your actual depths on that wall.
Could I get a point of clarification to that remark?
Sure.
The fact that we have a deck 8 feet above the ground, is that a problem with your interpretation?
No.
I want to see a cross-section of the wall too, that's on my list.
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with cross-section of wall, but I'm just trying to understand, because if you're telling me the deck's gonna be a problem,
No,
I may have to tell the
no.
client to get rid of
A
the deck.
retaining wall is a retaining wall, a deck is a deck. If you
Okay,
have a
fine.
sonotube in the ground, you're not having a sonotube. I want to be clear on what the
I
structure is
understand,
now.
I understand.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Courtney?
If I'm interpreting your plan, you're saying that the limit of work, you've got this line drawn, and then in the area beyond the limit of work, you put hay bales and silt fence. Shouldn't it be the other way around? You follow what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, in other words, if the limit of work is here, your hay bales should be on that side,
Yeah.
which effectively gives the guy only about 18 inches. You've got that drawn wrong on here,
I will give you a detail of that.
if you follow what I mean.
Jack shows a thick limit on
That, those bales are true.
Okay, so and I gotta tell you, having been in the business and having to deal with limits of work this close, it's absolutely unrealistic. Because a limit of work is a plane, it's a vertical plane, it goes up infinitely toward heaven. So how is somebody going to, well, or up in the sky. So how is somebody going to do work on a deck with 18 inches of space without crossing that line? It ain't gonna happen. He needs 10 feet, I agree. I agree with Jen on that, and I'm sure the other people on this board who are also in the business would say that. So that's my first concern here. My other concern is that Attorney Wall made the note, and Jen reinforced it, and I've said it myself, and everyone else, Betsy, that this board should not consider property issues. That's not our competence, okay? And I would agree with that. However, in my view, you're putting the cart before the horse in coming in front of this board. Because there are property issues here, at least that's the sense I get, that need to be resolved. And the resolution of those property issues may totally change what you come in to this board for a permit for. So we're going to spend, we've already spent 45 minutes, considering something that, as a result of negotiations between the owners over property issues, will change. So I have trouble with all of that. I'm not gonna get into the validity or the details of any issues of property, but I am saying it is clear that potentially there are issues there. And it seems to me, and it's not just this application, it's any application. Those issues need to be resolved first before you come in and waste our time. I have no other questions.
I have no questions at the moment, thank you.
I would like to just clarify, because I think it's important for you to know. If we didn't know, in our opinion, these easements are clear, precise, and to the point. And until this application was submitted, we had no inkling they were going to challenge the easements. I have my own feelings, which I will not articulate as to why that was discussed. But I think it's clearly inappropriate for that subject to be brought up.
Well, you know, I'm not gonna, Jack, I don't wanna get into a debate about it.
Yeah, and
I'm
just
saying, I'm just
your
saying,
time.
if this is
This is not
gonna,
directed to
we're
you.
wasting everybody's time, Jack. If all of a sudden, the property issues become a matter of litigation between the owners, right or wrong,
Yeah, we already filed though, and then it was brought up. That's the problem.
Courtney, they have a right to file.
I didn't
So
say
let's
they
just
didn't.
move
I
on.
just-
Yeah, we're just moving on for that one, guys.
Any questions?
I have some questions. If I were just looking at this and I was out hiking and I looked at this topography, I'd say, aha, there's a stream bed I could follow going down. This swale where you're intending to put the house, in a big rain, does it ever serve as carrying water down towards the coast?
Absolutely.
Well, are you going to do anything upstream of it to keep it from going into the house?
Well, we we show a trench drain, first of all, over here, which leads to the catch basin.
Did you provide a
And there's
detail
another
on
one
that?
over here. So we are going to intersect
But
some of the surface walls.
But do you have surface water of what the drainage area that swale drains? Did
It's a
you,
good question, you know what I'll have to do? The honest answer is, I gotta take a better look at it. Let me take a look at it, see if there's a crown in that driveway, which would define the watershed a little more clearly. We haven't done a detailed center line survey of that driveway because, to be honest with you, it was outside your jurisdiction, I didn't think of it. I didn't think of
yeah.
that question.
Well, I mean,
So-
I look at
Water
it and I
goes
think,
downhill.
if I had this house, I wouldn't want water rushing
Oh,
down.
we've thought about it too. Believe me, that's why we have the trench drain there. That's why we have what I consider a rather large drainage basin for a house. We're talking 4-foot diameter, 4 foot deep, and 2 feet of stone. That's a little bit bigger than the normal.
Well, yeah,
I'll
for,
tell you that.
for drainage from a roof, but this could be drainage from a,
I can't answer that until I do the survey.
Okay.
But it's a good question.
And you're gonna have Gary review your plan, right, Jack?
I already spoke to him.
Okay,
Doesn't
good.
have a
for
problem
cut
with
and
it.
fill?
No, Gary,
Oh,
Warwick
Gary
is
is
going,
right.
I
yeah,
didn't mention his name, but
Right, okay,
he and I we trade work all the time.
yeah.
yeah.
And you are gonna give us cut and fill calcs
Everything she asked for, we're gonna give you.
and cross-section of the
I'd
retaining wall?
like to hear
But
that.
these are on my list too, so I just wanna
All
make
mine
sure.
is now.
I'd like to hear those things.
Okay, you have another question?
Yes, I do. Now that you brought that up, Jack, what's the surface of the driveway gonna be?
I don't think we're gonna change it.
Okay.
It's a gravel driveway now.
Okay.
Um,
Dealing with similar grades right now, you're not as wide, but the trench drain that you're proposing, you're saying is going to one of these two dry
The
wells?
one to the north.
Okay.
Question?
What I saw in a 3-chamber on a trench drain on my site surprised me on one of the storms that we recently had. So if the soils are not leaching well, even though you've augmented it with the correct amount of stone and such, you're not just capturing roof runoff and such, that, I would really encourage examining that, because you are gonna capture quite a bit of runoff into that trench drain if it functions properly, and that may be undersized.
Well, what I'll do is I'll use the term forebay. We will be looking at maybe having a sediment trap or a forebay prior to the final leaching, because you're talking about sediment migration. And I understand.
Yep.
I just made a note.
Thank you,
We'll look at it.
thank you.
I was more fixated on containing the first flush of the house to comply with your stormwater regulations. Didn't think of that.
Yeah, I always tend to look upstream.
Understandably. I think my opening remark was that, the drainage coming off the road, we understand is an issue. I just didn't think it was quite that much of an issue. But when I do the centerline profile, if we find a hump over here where the rest flows that way, that's one thing. If we find it goes all the way back to Acapesket Road, maybe we will recommend maybe just changing the grade a little bit to divert the flow.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
It's a
drainage could
reasonable
be a big
question,
issue
and
on this.
the reasonable answer is, we'll look at it.
all right.
Thank you.
You want a continuance?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. I haven't forgotten you in the back row there. Shit.
Oh, I'd be happy to
I
answer any
couldn't,
of their questions,
you're
too.
gonna get thrown out of class pretty soon.
Jack, if you need my assistance to go over the buffer regs, I wouldn't be able to meet with you to the 8th or the 9th at the earliest.
Well, I'd like to just schedule it for the 8th and then figure that.
Okay, so
just
you're
need a
gonna,
day
you're
to
looking
change
at
it.
either the 17th or the 31st of July, because they don't meet the 24th.
Well, 17,
They're just gonna,
means we have to file by the 10th.
Mhm.
We're
I haven't
better off
forgotten
with
you.
the 31st.
I would like to speak before you
Yeah.
accept his request for teaching.
No, we can put a motion on the table, which is what we're gonna do. That's what our procedure is.
I understand. I just hope you don't vote it before speaking.
No.
Oh,
I
Mike,
wouldn't
we
let
would
you
never do
speak if
that.
we voted.
Okay, so I would have to say, unless there's a conflict, oh, that's fine.
We just can't wait to hear you.
July 31st is what
July
we're
31st?
requesting.
Okay.
On behalf of the applicant, I move that we continue this hearing till July 31st.
Second.
Okay, are there any other questions on the board? I know there's questions from the audience. Mike?
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer. Yes. I'm a registered engineer, professional surveyor. I've been hired by Charles Slacken, the director of audit. I have reviewed the notice of intent, and I've reviewed the plans. I urge you to deny the plan, the application outright, because it's completely inadequate. It's inadequate for a whole host of reasons. The first thing I want to do is pass out a copy of the Lakefront Plan 314-37.
Put that in there.
And I call your attention to the frontage is 48.28 feet on Acrobatic Road. And while it has frontage on Virginia Road, it doesn't have that apparently today any rights in it. Under the state act, the State Wetlands Act, if you have a local obtainable approval required, you're supposed to have filed that simultaneously. So if they need a special permit from the Board of Appeals or a variance, they're supposed to have filed that. And they're supposed to give you a copy of that application. So, under the state act, they've improperly filed. The second thing is, no matter what Jack says, the preparation of this plan is within the practice of land surveying. I have given you a copy of the state law. The state law is very specific about what a land surveyor can do. And
hear me, copies? Thank you.
and that survey is, he testified that he did it. He testified that he was gonna have another firm come in and stamp it. I think if you would refer this film to the Board of Registration, they would be very upset because that's not supposed to be done. This is, no matter what, this is a survey he prepared, topography. He's showing you property lines, he's showing you locations. He's actually showing a setback of 10.3 feet off of a property line boundary. He's showing you that he describes that he set beam poles at these locations. The other thing is, it's a completely inadequate narrative. He never discusses how he meets the performance standards of the regulation. And in fact, as we pointed out, he has the structure too close to the easement. He doesn't even describe anywhere that he's asking for any kind of relief. These regulations have been in force in effect for many years. The other point of me passing out this lot is big, and he should be showing you all of the resource areas on a lot. If you look at this, you compare this to this, you see the lot is bigger, as shown somewhat in the inset, but there's actually a wetland here that's not very clearly, which is on the linked comp plan as the cultivated land plan. So, to me, he should have shown you all of the wetlands, or he should have put a note on it that not all the wetlands are shown, or somehow describe it. And the first time I heard that it was mapped by a wetland scientist was tonight. That should have been in the notes. And as far as I'm concerned, this is just an inadequate application. And there are 11 points here. And these are significant points. Let's talk just about the fact that this leaching pit is only 4 foot by scale from the edge of the stone to the wall. If I would stand here, 4 foot is about where that is. So that's where the edge of the stone is. That's elevation 14. Elevation 24 is like a couple of feet above that, and then he has fill coming down. He's talking about an 18-inch retaining wall, an 18-inch footing, but he's got at least 5 foot of fill. We thought it was 7 because we read his contours wrong. But the wall has to project into the ground 4 feet. I look at this as a completely inadequate notice, and I would suggest that the commission deny it based on those 5 points I just stated. You should deny it because he didn't file for the locally obtainable permits. He also has an inadequate narrative. There's a lack of a professional land surveyor. He didn't identify that he failed to meet the Falmouth wetland regulation standards, and he didn't show all resource areas on the lot. It's not right for abutters to come in, look at a project, and we find this amount of information, and then just continue back and forth where continuance is in. It's just not right. It should have been done better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jack?
Can I steal somebody's land court plan? Courtney? Oh.
I wouldn't ask to speak again, except I think it's very relevant. I think it's relevant to, first of all, to clarify, Mike, that when we provide information to other professionals, in this particular case, we would give the raw data file to Gary. We would look at the entire data and determine whether or not there's a problem. No different than if I were a party chief to some other survey company who brought the data in, they reduced, plotted it, and looked at it. Secondly, I don't think it's appropriate. This is a plan prepared by Paul Rao and myself that shows the wetlands in 2002 when this project was approved by the planning board. I don't think it needs further conversation. Here is the wetlands. Here is our lot. This is 200 feet away. I don't believe it's in the interest of the board, is certainly for most applicants, to locate a wetland 200 feet away when the activity's over here. We will give you a copy of this as evidence of what was done in the past. Obviously, Mike and I disagree about a couple of things. I happen to believe I'm within the right, and he disagrees. I just don't know what that's to say about it.
Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question, Madam Chairman.
Wait a second. Brian, did you?
No, I just one quick clarification too. Whenever an applicant files an application, we have to meet the similar requirements. I think Jack said we're going to come back as far as the buffer zone. We did give Mr. McGrath a copy as a courtesy when we refiled. This file has actually been pending for the original file, Jack.
Oh, it's got to be 2.5 months.
Yeah, it's been on file for 2.5 months, and when Jack, I don't want to speak for Jack, but he drew the top of the bank, and he believed it was a correct and defensible place to put the top of the bank. When staff expressed some concerns about that, we went out and hired Mr. O'Connell, the expert. He took a more conservative view, and so we voluntarily asked for a continuance before it even opening. So all of this has been available, and we gave Mr. McGrath a courtesy copy. So I just take issue with the idea that we're coming in at the last minute trying to slide something by. We're going to address everything. We took comprehensive notes. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
My one question is, can someone check with the zoning board of appeals to see if they need to see this under special permit?
I'll look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, second on the table, to continue this hearing on July 31st. Are there any further questions? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, nobody has a hockey game to go home to, but
Yeah.
there's always next year.
I was told somebody was just happy to watch 7 more weeks of hockey.
Watch 7 more weeks. Yeah, I
They
mean,
were depressed, but they got to watch 7 more weeks
yeah,
of
7
hockey,
more
so-
weeks is better than being at the bottom of the league.
I have another friend who has something stuff, and that's why I do.
With a good year.
So my brother-in-law doesn't want to talk about hockey.
We'll let you gentlemen go
Oh,
home.
wait. Oh, that's
Those of you in the back row, we still have a meeting. Vote orders of conditions. Jen, you ready?
I am.
If somebody see Mario, would you send him back in, please?
I will.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Happy 4th, everybody.
Yeah, he was. He should be happy if he came back from vacation.
See, the range you've been getting. I mean, it's one thing if all you have is this little list.
Get a nap in?
Yes.
Yes. Now, before we get into anybody gets into trouble, who has the quorums?
Susan. It is Tommy, Mike, Betsy, Tom, Mario, and Courtney for 37 Chappaquiddick.
Molly
Road.
Cornell, 37 Chapquit Bars Road.
Tommy, Mike, Betsy, Tom, Mario, and Courtney.
Okay, this is the Phragmites.
This is the Phragmites removal, and the only concern the staff had was when Dr. Payne was discussing the use of the aerial spraying, but then in the next paragraph stated that there was a lot of native vegetation. I do remember making the statement at the hearing that I was uncomfortable with the use of the spraying technique if there was a lot of native vegetation in those areas. So what I would recommend is that in the areas they want to spray, they meet with the staff first, and then they modify that methodology in accordance with our concerns, because in cases like some of the areas of Little Sipawissa, you just had a monoculture of
Right.
Phragmites.
Right, but if
And
it's-
in this
if it's a
case, you
mix.
don't, there's a mix, so they're gonna have to set up some real checks and balances and be really careful about where they're using backpack sprayers and where they're just gonna have to go in and do it by hand. And although that might be a bit more labor intensive, absolutely more labor intensive, it's gonna need to happen.
But I have 2 others.
They'll probably follow
2 other things.
basically
One is that it's a much smaller area than where you were.
Yeah,
And so there won't be any machinery on the marsh
No.
platform?
No.
no,
No
but they
machine.
did say they were gonna bring a machine down.
Pardon? No, they,
we
to transport
discussed that.
the
To transport
tailings.
back up, yeah,
Yeah, in the
okay,
upland where the trail
Yeah,
begins.
Right, right.
they were gonna
Yeah.
cut it and move it up there.
yeah.
Right. And so.
They don't have to put the mats on the marsh and
Yeah,
roll
no
the machine back.
machinery on the marsh platform, and my other issue was where, you know, they're gonna create some sort of an opening to pull these bags up,
Yep.
to drag the bags up, and just to make sure that that's stabilized and then replanted.
Yep. So stabilize and replan access route.
And I believe their testimony, they acknowledged that we had concerns about this, and I think this order is giving them a
Yes,
nice,
and
a
there's
nice
there's
opportunity.
quite a few templates out there that we've used for these types of projects, so a lot of the conditions, Madam Chairman, I do believe the last one on this you wrote.
Yeah, but you have to have some specific special findings based on the fact that these are smaller areas.
Oh, yeah,
The stuff
definitely.
is mixed. Court,
Yeah, in looking at the access, I agree, when you do the initial cutting, you're gonna have to have a fairly wide access, and so that will involve, you know, disturbing some of the buffer. At the same time, inherent in this is gonna be 3 to 5 years worth of follow-up and being able to go out and monitor and, you know, spot treat.
right.
So I think in writing the order, you've got to allow for access points.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it might be a
And
wider
those could
one
be-
initially, and
Yeah,
then,
because
and
the
then a
access
path
points
to-
don't need to be
get
more
in.
than
Right.
3 feet at the most, you know.
Right.
And maybe that could be defined on the plan, those access points. Then everybody knows where they are. There may only need to be 1 or 2. but-
Okay, I'll have them submit another plan with access points.
I feel pretty confident that on the stewardship of this property and the involvement of the neighbors.
Yeah, I do too, but
Yeah.
but I would rather be explicit up front than.
Yes.
No, and I think that's the point. It's not, this is just for everybody's benefit. Everybody knows, okay, this is where you
Absolutely.
go in, and this is where we'll go, and what we do.
I'd like to,
Close this hearing.
How about
I'd
a
like
Close
motion?
this
to,
order.
I'd like to make a motion to accept this as discussed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Tommy's second. Do we have any other comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. James and Mary Catherine Mamery, 42 Brainerd Road. This is the new house out on the peninsula?
Tear down.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm getting the
Yeah,
quorum.
new, I mean, yeah, raised with a Z.
Tommy, Mike, Betsy,
Yes.
Tom, Mario, Courtney. Same quorum.
The wildflowers on top of it.
With the wildflowers, with the little lawn on top. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chairman, you specifically wanted them to replace the trees that they're proposing to move, which they said they would, in front of the mounded septic system.
Yeah, they were planning to, I just didn't want them to cut that pine tree on the, what corner is that, northeast corner. And I want them to have plants that like to get their feet wet in the
Mitigation.
mitigation area.
Wetland plants and mitigate, well, because it's a wetland.
Yeah,
Right.
Also, and I do believe I spoke directly to the builder who was represented that night. I'm going to need a very detailed dewatering plan.
right.
Yes.
Groundwater is right there.
Right.
They are absolutely going to
Groundwater
encounter
is
it.
above ground.
Yes, it is. That area does flood. And also, when they do, they talked about also using appropriate species for the dune area over there. They talked
Yep.
about doing some planting in the dunes, so appropriate dune species and a dewatering plan. I know that is a concern.
This should be a nice project though when it's finished.
Plan, yeah.
Anything else?
I'll move that we accept the order for 42 Brainerd Road, North Falmouth, as discussed.
Second.
One thing, I'm gonna probably have them put the dewatering basin between the house and the mitigation.
Yep.
So where they have that bump out for their new driveway,
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
that's
place.
exactly where their basin is gonna go.
Yep, that's a good place.
What was that?
Between
Oh, in this area, between the house
the
and
pump out for the
mitigation area.
driveway.
This kind of turnaround or parking area in their driveway is a nice area for, what was it, Ralph
Ralph,
Cataldo? Yeah.
right. We have a motion, a second on the table to accept this order as discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Anthony and Jody
Karinsich.
Karinsich, 90 Hamlin Avenue.
Yes, Madam Chairman,
Quorum? Just didn't want you to get mad at anybody else for saying that.
Quorum.
Stop.
Quorum?
Tommy, Mike, Betsy, Tom, Mario, Courtney. Pretty much gonna hold the same for the rest of this, actually not Falmouth Heights, but, Madam Chairman, I needed to, excuse myself and go down to the office real quick during this hearing, so it was the small, staircase down the coastal bank. which,
I don't think we had any concerns.
with mitigation planting for putting it down. Did the board identify any concerns they had while I was downstairs?
No, he
It
said
seemed
he was
everybody
putting
was happy
additional,
when I came upstairs, so.
Yeah.
he's
No,
gonna
it's-
put additional mitigation planning.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're proposed right
Right.
down on the base, so, okay. It'll just be your standard conditions, your standard special conditions. Clean
Yeah.
your resource, clean the area, maintain your plants, things like that. Okay.
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second.
Okay, motion second on the table to accept the order as discussed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous, so moved. Charles M. and Thomas S. Crane, 39 Juniper Road, Woods Hole. Same quorum.
Same car. Pretty straightforward project. We're gonna have a pre-construction conference. That was a comment, I believe, by you, Tom. You
Yep.
wanted us to have a pre-construction conference.
Yep.
Bless you.
Bill calculation.
Conference. Cut and fill calcs, yep. Landscape architectural, was it landscape? Something with the landscape
wall.
plans, you
The
want,
wall for the
The wall.
driveway.
Wall for the driveway.
The wall for the driveway.
okay, so you wanna see a plan on the driveway?
Yep.
And then Mario, you had an
control.
issue with just the monoculture of bayberry, you wanted to see a little bit more diversity in that. So we'll, condition that for more diversity in that area. And on the plan, you wanna see, a structural engineering plan on that wall? Okay. And more diversity, you got it.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second?
Motion and second on the table. Did you get that? All in favor say aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Linda Spence, 97 Old Dock Road, West Falmouth.
This was, it's all of you last week. Tommy, Mike, Betsy, Tom, Mario, Court. This was the davit system on the end of the dock.
I would only,
If the board were to approve this, I know you do have some concerns with the water depth in that area and the use of the boat. One way you could do that is have them do a few soundings out on the edge of the dock. And we could revisit that area in next year.
oh,
if
to see
they-
whether,
To see whether there is
all right,
any,
well, that could be a condition.
that's if you want to approve it, and that's a concern of the board, that's some way you may be able to monitor
The other
the
thing
use.
I would do is limit it to a, say, no more than a 12-foot
Yeah.
dinghy-type boat with small engine. That's,
They talk
their
about it.
testimony was they're gonna have an 11-foot
Yeah.
with a 5-horse engine.
Inflatable one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because these davits are not gonna hold anything more than that. either.
Right.
Right.
I think we should limit it to that 11-foot boat that they're
yeah, no more than
11 feet.
11
11
foot
feet.
Or to
with a
match their
15
notice.
horsepower,
Okay,
four-stroke.
And davits no larger than can support 500 pounds. I mean, I think it was
Yeah, what was the
485 or
testimony? It was like 300
something.
488 to
pounds
448
per
something.
davit?
No,
For the
the
pair.
whole, the whole pair can support,
Okay, so we just limit it to that
yeah,
weight.
Yep.
And I think they're supposed to be removed at
right, and Jen, their testimony was, that it's removed in the fall.
Removed, yeah.
October to April was their testimony.
Yeah, because they're only here 3 months out of the year. Okay, so they'll have to submit some soundings to us so we can monitor the impact to
Yeah,
that
to make sure
area.
that there's no
Because
blowout
I mean, in
there.
low tide, it's mud.
Yep,
how often? Annually? For the life of the order? Is that what you're looking for?
Eventually, they're gonna want compliance and they'll need to submit new soundings.
So you're not looking for annual
No,
soundings?
no. I just want a baseline sounding,
Okay.
on baseline soundings.
I just have one more.
Yeah,
Sure.
I know that they were assuring us that they were only gonna get the boat out when there's adequate water in that, but just to make a note, that, that boat can only come and go from that pier when there's enough to actually float the boat out of it. You're not lowering it.
Make it a
into the
finding.
water and dragging it.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely gonna be a finding on the water depth in that area, and the height of that wall, which is why I asked them to submit that information.
Well, and just so they're reminded, they're not supposed to be out there dragging it.
Yep.
off the end of when they leave the condition.
Could we specify a minimum depth of water before they can lower it?
I wouldn't without specs on the boat.
well, it doesn't, I mean, you know what, the draft isn't much. The problem is when you drop the engine and,
Right. Well, I think you could get in the boat and, use an oar or push off to get
yeah.
away enough. I think it probably only draws 4 or 5 inches.
Okay.
Okay? We have a motion?
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second.
Motion on the table is to accept the order as discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Now we're gonna need a quorum.
Oh, this one is
Anastasios,
Tommy, Mike, Betsy, and Courtney,
okay, Anastasios
according to Mr.
Perifestis,
Power's notes.
65 Falmouth, who also does an excellent job with notes.
Stephanie.
Falmouth Heights Road. This is the dredging project.
Yes, they provided the new analysis for you, they provided the locations of the core samples, and they would like to use the material for the project out on 8 Wigwam. That was the whole point.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it, since they gave the,
Okay. So
well, I
it'll
mean, I
just
don't know
be-
if anybody else does.
No.
I mean, they gave the chemical analysis, even though it's below the threshold for having to have it tested.
If they're gonna be using it on the area, the riprap on Wigwam, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be too concerned with it.
But before this issue, make sure that they have the dewatering,
Yep, I just wrote that dewatering.
I think we talked about a sediment
Boom, yeah, sediment curtain.
curtain. And
Turbidity
you'll see
curtain.
that there'll be time of year restrictions. DMF has
Yeah.
time of year restrictions.
Yep. Okay.
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second?
Okay?
I'd like to make a comment that Ed will be pleased that we got all of those samples in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he will.
Okay, motion second on the table. To accept this order as discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so
We're not
moved.
meeting next week, remember that, so please.
Darn.